on a Facebook feed, I saw my friend from college, Chinese American, do a share from 10 years ago that he's never shared before. And I haven't talked to him for 2 years. And I just was like, hey, Ming, let's talk about this and let's do it on video. He's like, okay, sure. So that's what I'm sharing with you right now.
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose so because a lot of my friends on Facebook, social media are people that I met through church.
Yeah.
And so, and then the non-Asian ones, it would be from college and work, other jobs that I've done. But I would say that it's not any particular person on Facebook necessarily, but I would say it's the things from the news, right? So the news, and then I guess Twitter, and then I guess there are some things that happen on my feed, but I would say most of it's been the media.
And so what are some of the things you heard that collectively after 3, 4, 10, 20 times you decided, you know what, I probably should share something to confirm and maybe validate others? Or
Okay, so I would say that it's and so I think right now everyone blames media for a lot of things. Like they blame media for things that they say is fake news, things that say is blown out of proportion. But I would credit the news for for taking the initiative of finding out why people are demonstrating. You know, why people have this hashtag Stop Asian Hate, right? And so when in their reporting, and also as people have sent their tweets, right, of why are they a part of this hashtag? Why are they demonstrating or protesting? And they would say that it's because they grew up holding things inside. Um, no one told them that they could share their experience or their story.
well, I would say not only they told them not to.
Yeah.
Like for example, like what were you taught to do as a Chinese boy? Like
Well, I was taught that no one cares,
no.
right? So no one. So if no one cares, then why would you say it,
Yeah.
right? Or um, if you say it, you're causing a problem. You're
Mm,
into a bigger problem than it is, right? So then I was told that okay, so if someone treats me badly or they're prejudiced against me, then I'm the problem and not them, right? So the offender, they're actually not the problem. The problem is me,
yeah.
right? And so those are the kinds of things that I grew up believing.
And does your dad usually has a bunch of sayings? Can you recall something that your dad would say if something happened? Is there
Yeah, I would starve to death.
Okay, so yeah. Now give it your dad's all because we've heard that before. So give us an example.
Okay, so I respect my dad. Okay, I am a man. I'm married for 20 years. I have 3 children that I love, and so and I work hard to provide for them. And those are things that I learned from my dad. Now there are some things that I had to learn outside of the home, right? So it's being more affectionate, telling my kids I love them. My dad didn't do that. Hugging me, my dad didn't do that. So the kinds of things that I learned, I had to, learn on my own from other people of telling my kids every day that I love them, hugging them, and then being there for them instead of just giving them a set of directives. Okay. But so my dad, in order to, he it was typical for him to make me feel guilty or shamed in order for me to behave, right? And so it would and so the idea is that as often as he shamed me or guilted me, then it would lead to good behavior, right? And then a lot of the things that he said would end with, if you don't want to starve, then you would do this. So he asked me, have you done your homework? And I said, no. Well, you should do your homework if you don't want to starve. Okay. You should get good grades if you don't want to starve. You should do your chores if you don't want to starve.
So you do have a choice.
But yeah, I mean, the choice is to starve or not to starve, right?
I wonder, Ming, can you go back to see, was there a time where you wanted to say, I was bullied, I mean, or somebody called me some names or whatever that were not your friends, and but you wanted to say something, but he was like, no, no, don't be a
He would say,
problem.
so what?
What's that?
He would say, so what?
Hmm.
Like I said, okay, I had this. Asians are the model minority, right?
Right.
That is the myth. Okay, Asians do really well at math. Okay, so I so I had this experience where there was a math problem, and I don't remember what grade I was in, maybe middle school, and it was an algebra problem that I didn't know, or I couldn't solve, or I got the wrong answer. And then so then my non-Chinese friend, non-Asian friend, said, "Hey man, I thought all Asians were supposed to be great at math." And I said, "Well, I guess this Asian is not that great." So I went home, told my dad the experience. He said, "Okay, so," and I said, "The guy was racist." And he's like, "No, it's not. It's true. Asians are supposed to be good at math." Right. And so then my dad told me that I was wrong to be offended, and that I was wrong to not understand the truth, apparently, that Asians are good at math. So those are that's one example of a number of things that I could have, that I just decided not to bring up, because as often as I brought up, my dad would tell me, "So what? Why is that a big deal?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Do you think that your other Asian American friends, because you grew up in LA,
No, I grew up in Fresno,
Fresno, do
Central
you think
California.
do you think that that's similar for some of your other Asian friends? Like you just move on?
Yeah, pretty much. It was either move on, or I mean, if they wanted to fight, I guess, I mean, they could fight.
Yeah. So share with us what you shared online and what is the story you shared online and what was your reaction to it?
Okay, so I have three children, and my wife is half Chinese and half Caucasian. So her features are not entirely Chinese, but I would say most people can tell that she is mixed.
No, I disagree. Like I can tell mixes because I'm a mix, but I was like, oh, she's white. She's definitely white passing. Now maybe your friends are more Chinese than me, and with your whole congregation like super Chinese and around all Chinese, I'm quarter white, so maybe my little detector is a little bit off, but I completely thought she was white. So when she showed up at our Aren't Asians All Like meeting, I was like, oh, that that's supportive. Support your husband. Yeah. So just clarification.
Okay. Okay. Well, she is half Chinese and half Caucasian, and so my children are three-quarters Chinese, one quarter Caucasian.
Like me.
But the thing is, though, is that all three of my children, their physical features are different. My oldest son, he has the darkest hair. So he has the darkest brown hair or black hair. Then my middle son, his hair is brown. It's sort of a darkish brown, so it's not as dark as his brother. Then my daughter, when she was born, it was blonde, like, or strawberry blonde, like that was her hair color. And so um, when we looked at her friends, like, so they had the class photos, right? Class photos. She looked like a white girl. I mean, her skin is very light, and then her hair was like a strawberry blonde. And so when she was 3 or 4 years old, I took her to the local park, so Jefferson Park here on Beacon Hill, and we sat there at the playground. Or I sat on so she was in the playground area, and I was on a bench, and so I was there, and Ironically, I was reading my Bible and watching her. And these two men walk up to me, and one is standing on either side of me. And so if they were trying to be intimidating, they were successful, because I instantly, stood straight up, and then I stood upright, and I was tense because I felt that something was going to go down. Right. And so they approached me and they said, yeah, pardon the intrusion, or I don't remember what they said, but so do you have a child here? And I said, yes, I do. And then they said, can you point your child out to us? And then I didn't ask why. I was just, okay, I'm going to follow directions, right? Because in my mind is, if I don't follow the directions, bad things can happen. Right. So fine, I'll follow directions so that bad things don't happen. So my daughter, I call her Mui. I don't call her by her name. Mui is little sister in Chinese, in Cantonese. And so I called her out. I said, Mui, may you come here, please? And so she runs over. She just drops what she's doing. She just runs over. And then I put her on my lap. And I said, okay, so this is my child. So do you have children here? And they're like, yeah. And I said, okay, so can you point them out? And then so then they proceed. One has one child, says, that's my child wearing this article of clothing. And the other one's like, those are my two kids, that one and that one. And I said, well, that's great. Can you call them over? Because the idea is that anybody can say that's my kid.
Yeah.
Right. And then so I went the extra mile. I went the extra step and called her over.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't just say that's my kid. I said, hey, that's my kid, and I'm going to bring her over.
Yeah.
And so these two guys, they call their kids by their names, and their kids, look, man, whatever. And they're just like doing their own. They're like they're either still on the jungle gym, still making their mud pie, whatever. They're just like, and then so I said, hey, so I proved that this is my daughter, this is my kid. And so I think you guys need to leave because you guys have not shown me that your kids are here. And then that's when they put the defense. We don't have to leave because this is a free country.
And
then I was like, okay, whatever, dude. Well, at least get out of my face. But I had to be polite because my daughter was here.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to cuss them out or anything like that. And of course I had my Bible too. But they just walked away to the other part of the playground on the other bench. And, and then I told my daughter, go, do you want to stay or go? And she's like, I feel like I want to go. And I said, we have every right to be here, because she felt the tension. Right. Here we are, my 3 or 4 year old daughter, and she feels the tension. And I said, we have the right to be here too. And she's like, I don't think I want to be here anymore. So we ended up leaving because I wasn't going to force her to stay.
How do you feel as a dad? Like, you stood up for her, but I'm just like mad. How did you feel?
Oh, I was mad. If there were just one of them, I probably would have stood up. But I was still, I stayed seated. I was kind of going like that, right? Because they're standing up, they're kind of tall. It's two white guys that are kind of tall. And so I was just looking up at them. And so I don't know if they liked that position or that posture, but I remained my humble posture. But I was mad. I was mad. And I was thinking, like, okay, so if me and another Asian guy approached a white guy.
Oh, yeah, no.
Hey, do you have a kid here?
Yeah. That's.
They'll probably tell me to go back to China.
Yeah.
Go ask China.
What did your daughter say? Do you remember?
I get what did they want?
And what did you say?
And so I wanted to put it a good, I mean, I
Yeah.
wanted something positive. So I said, oh, they just wanted to be safe,
Yeah.
right? They wanted to be safe. And then, and so they wanted to make sure that, that I had a kid here, you know.
Yeah.
And I told her that because there are some men that'll come to the park,
Yeah.
that, they'll take kids.
Yeah.
And then she said, oh, that's scary. And then kind of, that's when we had that conversation of,
Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm sure there are people who are listening like, well, they wanted to make sure you're not a child molester. What's wrong with that? And it's like, okay, good to have that, but different approach. I don't know what that approach is, but it's got to be a little bit different. Now, what did you tell? Who did you tell about this after this incident?
to be honest, I told my wife
Yep.
when she got home from work, and I kind of laughed it off.
Yeah.
I basically, how I say, so, hey, honey, so a funny thing happened at the park today. A funny thing.
Yeah.
I didn't say there's something that made me angry or I had a racist encounter. I just say, hey, honey, something funny happened at the park today.
Yeah.
And then I proceeded to tell her.
Yeah. And what did she say?
I don't quite remember her reaction.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't. Well, the first thing is she says, well, I'm glad that nothing bad happened.
Yeah.
And that you didn't, because she knows that I can have a short temper, right? I mean, I can get pretty passionate about things. And so she's glad that I remained under control.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of escalating things.
Yep. Yep. Okay, next question. But for those of you who are watching, please share the stream. I want to be able to have these candid conversations. I went to school with Ming. We were both in the Asian club, and and I want to just have these candid conversations so you can see Asian Americans just talking about Asian Americans and what we're trying to do about this and how it impacts us. Ming, back to you. When was the next time you shared this experience?
I think maybe I shared it in passing with some friends, but I never really made it a public thing until recently, until maybe 2 days ago on my Facebook page.
Yeah. And and also it was a few, maybe 10 sentences or just kind of bullet points. And so you don't get the two guys were flanking you as they stand and you're sitting. You don't get the whole essence. How did people react to that?
Well, even though it was very general, I didn't give all the details like you were mentioning.
Yeah.
There are a number of, pretty much all of the people who responded, they reacted in a manner that was encouraging to me, where they were grateful that I shared my story, that they were angry and they were sorry that I had that experience.
Yeah.
So they were very empathetic.
Yeah.
I haven't had anyone who said that's dumb or why did you post that?
Yeah. 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 Not sure where I was going to go with that. I think also some of the conversation we had when I called you up, whatever, 20 minutes ago. Well, you said to me, oh, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, can you remember what you said or what I asked you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad compared to other experiences right now in the media, right? Where people are actually being attacked, like physically attacked or spit on.
Or peed on.
Or yeah, I read that and that angers me, right?
Yeah.
I have elderly parents. I have my grandmother. If anyone pushes them hard, that would be very bad for them physically. Right?
Yeah.
Recently, there in San Francisco, there's that lady who was attacked, and then she fought back, obviously.
Yeah.
But so I mean, recently there's a lady where her purse was stolen. It happened last week. And so we're grateful that nothing bad happened to her physically, but she's in shock. And so when you hear that, then you're like, my story's not that bad.
Yeah, and I think we hear that like in the Asian American community, we'll say like, well, it's not that bad. Like black people, are being lynched and killed and constantly, and pregnant lady face floor on the concrete. Like it's not that bad. So who are we to say anything? It's not it's we can live with it. We've lived with lots of things before. Like like your father said, you just go on. Like it's not that you just deal with it. And so when you said that, we're both like, yeah, it's not that bad. Yeah, in comparison. And so, and we're Asian, we're hardy, or well, I don't know how, I'm pretty hardy. Um, but it's like we're taught really not to complain at all. Can you share what you're comfortable to share with? Because as the pastor of a Chinese congregation, can you share what you see or whatever you're comfortable to say about what you see or don't see and some of the cultural challenges?
So so in terms of instances of reporting, so if something happens, right, with any of our people in the community, in our church community, they won't report it necessarily. We have, I would say, with just the adults, with the Chinese congregation, the English speaking congregation, maybe we have upwards of 300 people. But I would say that if someone is attacked, typically we hear that because they told a friend or they told someone else. It's not like they reported it to me and say, hey, Pastor Ming, we need to make an announcement that this bad thing happened. And so we need to pray about it or whatnot. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first reason is because they don't want to make it a big deal.
And why
Right?
is that?
Because they don't want the attention because if they say this happened to me, then it's putting them in the spotlight.
Mm.
Right? So then it's like, I don't want to look like I want attention. And so, because if I share this experience, then attention is going to be on me, and I don't want that.
Now,
So,
can you explain that as a Chinese man? Can you explain that? Like no attention, like trying to blend in, trying the collective, like we're a team and just not trying to stand out.
yeah, I mean, I would say it's because the idea is that we don't want. There's that perspective of the individual, that the community is more important than the individual, right? And so we want to put the focus on the community and not the individual, because if it's individual, then it's perceived as being selfish.
And I want for the audience members, like this is a tight community. So Ming's Chinese congregation, very tightly knit. They're not even telling Pastor Ming, who's really fun and goofy and like super like approachable. They're not even telling him. So can you imagine reporting it to anybody outside of that? It's not going to happen. And the reason I want to have these conversations is because there are so many things, bad things happening that we don't know about. And here's a fine example.
Yeah.
And then our conversation before this about like help, etc. Do you want to share like some of the challenges? Because I think you know the Chinese community better than I do, and it's a proud community. Because I was asking Ming, I was asking you earlier, do you think that our Chinese people, are they concerned about going to Chinatown and shopping, etc.?
So part of not being perceived as selfish or attention seeking, um, kind of in the application of that thought, is people will not necessarily ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then it's sort of, oh, I am imposing on you.
Yes.
You know, I don't want to be, I don't want to impose on
I
your,
don't want to burden you.
yeah, I don't want to be a burden. And so that's why they won't ask for help. And another reason why they won't ask for help is because they're afraid that people are going to prejudge them and say, oh, are you scared? Is that why you need help? Are you weak? Is that why
Mm.
you need help? Um, so I
And,
see that you need to play the victim. You know, can't you just make better decisions? Like go with a friend, go during the daytime, and then maybe you don't need other people to burden themselves to help you.
so I think that the idea of shame culture, shame and pride cultures, Chinese and Japanese communities, it's very much pride. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're talking about that, I'm like, oh, that's a Chinese attribute I got from my dad, where he doesn't ask for help. No, I have to, Dad, let me help you. Let me help you. Like, let me figure that out. I can YouTube and whatever. And I have to like get in there. And I thought, oh, that was just a masculine trait, which he also has too, but I think it's a Chinese trait, where I had to learn. I think it was in college was the first time I asked for help because I'm, self-sufficient. I'm a good athlete. I do these things by myself. And, my dad raised me to be really independent. And, and so, yeah, thanks. I just the connection right now. Yeah. And they don't ever want to burden me with
Here's another
anything.
thing for you, Jolene.
Yeah.
So you would think nothing wrong about posting that you helped your dad on Facebook. Like, oh, I have pictures. I helped my dad build a deck. You know, it was really fun. I learned a lot. But someone who knows your dad could see that post and he can ask your dad, oh, wow, you couldn't do this on yourself, so you needed your daughter to help you. And that would be very shameful. Then he might go to you and say, Jolene, why did you post that? You shamed me in front of my friend.
Yeah. Yeah, and being that I did the deck and had my dad help me with the things that I needed strength for, that would be very awful. And so that's where you and I are so different because I am third generation Chinese and Swedish, fourth generation Japanese, and and so my parents are so proud that like, yeah, my daughter built this deck. And they let me take full credit all the time when maybe I should take maybe 80%, but I take the full thing. And they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
huh, yeah, very interesting. Hmm. I think, let's see, I think there's one more thing regarding. So in San Francisco and in New York, there are groups that are helping elderly go for a walk and shopping. And I was wondering if those, if you've heard of those here. And if so, do you think that the Chinese elders that you know would accept help?
Um, I think places like New York and San Francisco, they have larger Asian communities. Um, and they're, I believe in general, they're also more progressive than Seattle. Um, I don't think Seattle's as progressive as some people would think. Um, and so I'm pretty sure something is being organized in Seattle, but I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if there's as good as organization as other cities to provide these kinds of these care things.
Yeah.
Um, the thing with so that's one thing. The other part of it is the recipients because the people in Seattle, so the Chinese or the Asian community who lives in Seattle, we're talking about the old folks, the elderly, they're also different than the ones in New York and San Francisco because they're a part of this community. And so even if the elderly Asians would accept help from other people in New York or in San Francisco, they will not necessarily accept help if they're in Seattle, right? Because our Seattle elderly, they might be not as trusting.
Why do you think?
Um, it's probably because of what they've seen and experienced in Seattle in general.
Mm.
They don't think that Seattleites are trustworthy, right, or reliable, and so they would rather decline and take a risk of, you know, walking alone or not accepting these escort services or whatnot.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because it's so small. I mean, our Chinatown's like three blocks, or you had Vietnamese town that's another block or two, and Japantown like half a block. So
Mhm. And then there are still, I would say, there are still some residual trust issues between the different Asian groups, right? Because non-Asians, they lump us all together,
yeah,
right? I mean, but Asians are diverse, right? And we all have rich histories and we have complicated history, right? So an elderly Korean person may not trust a young Japanese person,
yeah,
because of the history.
yeah, yeah. And my grandma, what did she died? I don't know, 10 years ago. I don't know, 15 years ago. I'm getting older. I can't remember, but she's Japanese American, and of course, they lived where your church is, the red line district where minorities could live. And so in the neighborhood, there's Italians, black folks, and Japanese folks, and some Filipino folks. And so in her area, there was some prejudice, with some of the black. I remember she would say "Guru-chan," and that's for a black person. And so um, it was very clear the separation of the different races. You hang out with your Japanese people, not Filipino, Japanese. And this is my grandma's generation. So the other day when I was in Chinatown, just looking around, seeing a very rundown place, but with all the graffiti, and I would say 20%, I think, of the artwork of the boarded up windows were Black Lives Matter. And I saw an Asian lady walking up the street to Danny Wu Park, and it was really steep. I mean, I was winded going downhill, which is very sad on my behalf. And so she was going uphill, and she had two big armloads of things. I'm like, oh, you know what? I should help her, even though I'm super out of shape. And I tried to motion to her because she didn't speak English, like, oh, can I help you? Walk and she spoke to me, and actually I don't even know what language she's speaking. It wasn't Japanese, Chinese, or Korean or Vietnamese, but it was some other language. And so she declined. And so I see what you're saying, where she doesn't know who I am, and I didn't speak her language, so there probably was some trust issues there.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
young people, well-meaning young people, I mean, they're lumped together with the bad young people who do, who are disrespectful of their elders,
Yeah,
or disrespectful of other people's property.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like young people now are kind of lumped all together, it seems, right?
Hmm.
It's that generation versus generation thing.
Yeah, well, it could be. I mean, I went to this Black Lives, Asians for Black Lives. It was on Beacon Hill at this church on the top. It was by the Filipino bakery. Oh, so good. And and it was all 20 somethings. There was like two other people older than me, and there were a bunch of mixed people and different sexual identities. And like I was like the boxy one who's like very traditional. And it was really weird. I felt extremely awkward there. I felt like very conservative and weird. And so I probably am that old person, maybe grouping all of the young people together too. They're so liberal and like this and that, and the land blessings and the so I get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah. Well, Ming, oh, I know. Is your Chinese congregation, do they talk about this at all? I mean, because you mentioned if there's an incident, but do they talk about this in general, or do you know about the
Um,
Asian
I would
violence?
say I don't hear a lot of it, because I would say that they just sort of talk within their friend group or their social group, whether it's phone call or they use WhatsApp. So it's the app that they use on their phones, right? So, but it's not a widespread thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because like I said, they don't want people to say that they want the spotlight.
Yeah.
And I would say that the difficulty is when I don't know about it, then it's hard to redirect the conversation, because sometimes conversations, they can devolve, right? And what I mean by devolve is um, they can go off track. Like a situation can get worse and worse, as it progresses.
Yeah.
Right? Because all it takes is a person to go in there and then make. So it's like my situation, right? Um, was it racist? Perhaps. Was it a privilege thing? Most likely. But the idea is that I wanted to share it so that people will know that this stuff happens, right? And so we need to have this conversation that racism does exist, white privilege does exist,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is, though, is a conversation can devolve when someone says, "Well, Ming, next time you should stand up," or we all need to like be vigilant. If this ever happens, then we need to stand up and get in their face, or be careful when there are more than white person who approaches you, right? Because I've seen this situation, so I don't read Chinese very well. I mean, I can pick out certain things, um, but so I saw so one of the people in my church, they showed me this the thread of what was going on, and so there was a lady whose purse was snatched. So elderly Chinese lady, purse was snatched, and then so that went from, everyone be more careful, be aware of your surroundings. We're so glad that nothing happened. Then it turned into a threat of watch out for any black person,
Oh. Hmm. Yeah.
right? And so that's what I mean when the conversation can evolve.
Yep.
And so that's when I instructed this person who showed me, well, you can type Chinese in your cell phone, I can't. So can you type this? And that was
Yeah.
to the point where of let's not lump everybody together. Let's not say that, you know, the people group of this,
Yeah.
this people group is totally bad,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean that's promoting evil, and I don't want that. It's because there are purse snatchers of every age, purse snatchers of every skin color,
Yeah.
every cultural background, right? And so that's what I did. I told them, put this in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if there were, I think if there were more conversations I heard about, then I could do more of that.
Yeah.
But because I don't hear a lot of that, then there are stereotypes that perpetuate.
Yeah. 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 You need some informants. Yeah. Okay. Well, Ming, thanks for doing like a quick, like impromptu conversation. Again, we college together, and I thought, he knows what his Chinese congregation are up to, and just another perspective besides mine, very different than mine. Because you're second generation, you're born here, but your dad was from China. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And I hope we can keep sharing stories. And I'm glad that you shared yours, and hopefully that will spur others to share theirs.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for reaching out, Jolene. I
All
appreciate it.
right. Thanks. All right. Bye bye.
When was the last time you felt like this? Has it been a minute? It is time to mix it up. Climb out on those limbs and jump into life. Life is full of excitement. We just need to get curious, get uncomfortable, and go for it.